Loschak to learn it with us, to teach us and to learn with us about the important topic of dating. Today, our topic is about your Bubby was right. We are lucky because Ahrele not only is a dear friend of the community and a fantastic educator, but he is the one who worked on and compiled curriculum. So please, the sheets are going around. Please participate and give your undivided attention to Rabbi Ahrele Loschak.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ethan. It is an honor to be here. And okay, so we're gonna start. I'll start with taking a questions, right? Let's take some questions. Let's get some feedback here before we begin.
Sorry.
Good. Lesson number 2 in our course about dating. Last week we learned about the importance and why it's a good idea to get married. If you were convinced, good. If not,
Come again.
I know I gave you my arguments. We could try again in person, but I think that kind of we summed it up last week. I hope you thought about that. I hope it gave you food for thought. It continues to give me food for thought, to be honest. It's something, it's an active experiment every day. And so that was that. So now that we finished, now that we covered that last week, and again, I'm not as pretentious to say that we covered it. Again, these are things in life, and you're never going to sufficiently cover them per se. Something, like I said, it's ongoing, but we did discuss it. And so with that in mind, we're going to turn to this week. We're going to talk about more about the dating process, because last week was about marriage. That's where the dating is going. So now that we know where we're going, let's try to see how we can get there. So in that vein, just a fun little exercise here, just to kind of get you thinking in this idea. Look on. I hope I put the yes. Look in the first exercise over there. Okay, you see it says, "What's in your suitcase?" So over there you have a hypothetical that you're going on vacation. Okay, you go on vacation. Thank God, actually, it's not been such a bad winter this year in New York City. So not so. We're not killing for it as much, but not just bad. We would love to go on vacation. So imagine you're going to the Bahamas. So you're going to the Bahamas, and you plan on spending your day on the beach, snorkeling, and the kind of just suntanning. So what would you pack in your suitcase? I gave you 4 options. Of the 4 options, which one would you pick? This one shouldn't be too hard. Option number 2.
Depends if you're Ashkenazi or not.
Depends if you're Ashkenazi.
Here.
To the Bahamas.
No, 1. Option 1.
You're gonna take long pants, hiking stick, and a tent to the Bahamas in the winter, in summer, or what? No, I'm saying in theory.
I want to stay in the cold.
Right, but I'm saying in theory, if you would be going, if you would be going,
Sunscreen.
we can have another conversation what your qualification of choice is.
Number
2, right? I think it's unanimous.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Now, if you pack the Metro card, it's not going to do you much good. If you pack hiking stick, would be a good idea for a different vacation. Bahamas won't be well. I mean, maybe, but a winter coat not going to help. So the point of what I'm trying to bring out here is very, very simple. It's a very basic point, and that is, you're going somewhere. Be prepared. Do the right things to get there. If you pack the wrong things to get there, then you're making a basic mistake. So now, the destination of where you want to arrive at when you're dating is ostensibly marriage. Very good. Happy marriage. Now, so the question we have to be asking ourselves are, what are the things that get me towards a happy marriage? Very simple. The same way when I'm going to the Bahamas, I can get the sunscreen. So when I want to get married, I have to language. That is what dating is for. To find that one person with whom I'm going to be the most compatible and enjoy, hopefully, a long, successful, happy, meaningful marriage. Does that make any sense? Yes. Okay, good. And in the head, this all makes sense, right? So now, the question is, what are those things? When you're going to the Bahamas, it's obvious. It's sunscreen, towel, your bathing suit. That's obvious because we know what you need to do there. It's straightforward. Going into marriage, it's not as straightforward. But the reality is, is that it's not. It's there. There are elements of it that are pretty straightforward, actually. As much as we like to think that it's, or as much as experience maybe has shown that it's very complicated and there's so many things. It's emotional and it's people are complex and they are. There is an element of that we can, so to speak, boil it down to a science, and there is. And we're going to focus on that today. And hopefully by the time we're done, I think this will be quite helpful. And if you're not convinced, then quite good. But I think it's quite a compelling case. So let's get into that. Before I do, I want to talk about the current law because we're going to talk about today some models of dating that are age old, but hopefully as insightful as can be. But before we do that, I want to explore. It's the doorbell. It's quite
It's a very melodic voice.
quite a jingle. I want to explore the current models and see if what we think about it and how it's working. Because if we want to try something new or learn about something new or rehash something old, we have to first figure out what we currently have and if it's necessary to be replaced or modified. So if anybody, I do want to volunteer. Someone with sufficient confidence and oratory skills. Describe to me in your own words. Describe to me in your own words how you would, in 60 seconds or less, the current dating model of the 21st century for young adults living in a big city like New York. Go for it.
Okay. I think, can I just do like bullets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Run
a
through
lot
it.
of options. Fear of commitment as a result of potentially thinking that there might be something better that comes along.
There's a lot of bullet points.
And I think that we live, like our generation is a generation of excess. Like we're spoiled. We have everything we need at our fingertips. And so we don't need to rely on humans the way that our parents had to rely on people. We're very self-sufficient.
Okay.
I think that impacts us in our dating.
Absolutely. So, but if you had to describe like just the actual process, like what happened, tell the story tell me the story of a meet cute to the end.
Like, are we doing technology or shotguns?
What do you think?
Technology.
No, I'm saying 21st century dating
Okay, you
for
download
an
an app.
average.
Okay, you download an app. You put your cutest pictures on the app, potentially with like your nieces and nephews and maybe your dog. You write a few bullets about how you are well-rounded and spiritual, but also like to hike and go to Broadway shows. And that you're looking for somebody to, build a life with.
Like Shabbos meals.
Right, like to host and read and all that stuff. And then you swipe left or right, depending on how cute you think the person on the other side is and how adorable their dog or their nieces and nephews are, and potentially some relatability with their own description. If you match,
Which is probably as generic as one you gave.
is this probably as generic as the one that you gave and actually says nothing about who they are as a person. Then if I'm going to use like gender pronouns here because whatever, like, so then if the guy texts you or messages you on the app and has the middle way and actually set a place and a time that you're going to meet, you might actually stand a chance at meeting that person.
And he doesn't look creepy.
All right. And if not, and they just want to schmooze and be pen pals, well, that might happen too. And you might never actually end up meeting that person.
So let's say you get past first base. You're on the.
Then you go to the Shabbos Kiddush.
Wait, one second. Before I want to continue this 1 second. Before I go further, is this a shared experience or this is anecdotal? I mean,
I'm
it's all
pretty
anecdotal.
sure it's shared.
Okay, good.
The girls never do anything wrong.
Yeah, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna run through
I'm
this.
speaking from my perspective.
Okay, 60
I can
seconds.
talk about what women do.
You get back past first base, and I mean the first date.
Okay.
Okay. Now what happens?
Then the girl
60
doesn't
seconds.
know, should she text and say thank you for a nice night? Should she wait for the guy to text her and say, do you want to see me again? Sorry, I'm not really feeling the vibe. Yeah. maybe he will text her, continue to schmooze, and they'll just continue to schmooze, and they might never make it to the second date.
Maybe he'll ghost her.
She might never hear from him again, or he might text her and say, I had a really nice time, and then he might never hear from her again because she doesn't know how to properly communicate what she has to say about the date. Like, oh, I had a really nice time too, but I'm not really sure. Maybe we should go out again. Maybe we should. I don't know. It's like a whole mental gymnastics that you go through. And then like maybe you graduate to the next level. But it's like like hamster wheel in your head.
A lot of
Yeah, it's a lot of maybes.
Okay.
The conviction, the exception.
She's got a lot to say also.
Okay, I'm gonna do three more. You wanted to add some statistics? I see you, and I'm sure we'll get there. You wanted to add some
I
statistics?
just wanted to say that there is an element of statistics, like of all the swiping or matching, there's only like a certain portion that's gonna like reciprocate.
Right.
Of those, there's only a smaller proportion that's gonna like kick off a conversation. Of that, it's like the narrowing of the
It's like a
statistical
funnel. It's like making cold calls on foreclosure. Like, eventually, you'll hit
So I
one.
just wanted to like bring that up, that it's not like a guarantee this end to end, but it gets smaller and smaller
Yes.
and smaller, and so like even of like maybe 100 potentials, if you end up with maybe like 2 dates.
Okay.
And also, I'm not
No,
saying
but
that
this-
women don't do anything wrong. I'm saying generally women tend to be more inclined towards commitment and wanting to get married and become a mother.
This is
than
very-
men do.
This is a millennia-old problem.
Terms and
Yeah.
conditions of
Uh,
love. Can I just add to that? Is that
Sure.
I just think it's very interesting.
I see. We're gonna get, yeah.
Just to defend the guy's side. No, but
Well, she didn't
I
attack
mean, we
you.
are outnumbered over here. Anyway, just the point is,
I didn't
also,
hear an attack
what
on
I've
the male.
noticed, I'm just from what I've heard and I've spoken to people and whatever, is that I find very interesting is that at least in New York, there's a very big selection. Like I call it buffet style. Like everyone's at a buffet and you don't know what to choose. So I'm not talking about personal experience. I'm talking about what I've experienced. But I think in theory, but I think also on the apps and stuff like that, I mean, people will accept, and then you have like 13, 15,
Yes, you have
20
so many
bars.
matches.
So you're
and,
like, who should I speak
yeah,
to?
I
Like,
agree.
so from one place you have a selection, another place you have a selection. You got a kiddish, oh, I just saw you. Oh, like a pitch. I got to speak to them. Like,
Right.
do you understand? So I think it's very confusing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, like, what do you want to say?
Yeah, this like whole process described, it's an app. I just feel like it's just a personal thing. Like I know I'm in the minority, but like I feel like I would just want to meet someone like organically, and I just feel like the whole process of an app is just kind of like strange. Like, and maybe I get it. Like I feel like most people ideally want to meet someone in person, but like I feel like the kind of concept of like meeting someone just with the apps and stuff is just like a bit kind of strange. That's just my thoughts though.
Okay.
I would like
Those are
to
viable
add
thoughts.
that there's information asymmetry, that when you meet people in person, you don't know the status. If they're like currently available and looking, if they're currently like starting to see somebody.
Right.
There's information asymmetry, and so when you're on the app, you're assuming that you're all there for the same reason. And so you assume the other person is receptive to a conversation, whereas in person, it's like the status is unknown how receptive they actually are.
Yeah, we're gonna address-
Just, like,
This is great. Like you're kind of setting up the stage, which is great. So that was the point. I want to hear from you. I think you wanted to say something.
No, he just keeps saying that.
Okay. Okay, I want to take 2 more. Okay.
Okay,
So
so
you
one
do
thing
to
I
get
wanna
started.
add is just in terms of the app and communication, at least for me, like, it's terrible. Like, it's like, hey, how are you? What's up? Like, the conversation's so boring. And then if it does get spicy, it's too spicy. And then, like, where, like, are you gonna ask, usually, right? Like, I have to initiate, like, so, we push your drink sometime, like, why can't they say that? And like,
I think you can just say, I'm not here to be your pen pal.
I mean, but then I think that's like sounds rude.
I don't need more friends.
Yeah.
Okay. One more point.
Say you're somewhere to eat, they all run away.
No, that's not true.
Last point. Yeah.
We don't know ourselves either. So we have soul is something completely different than what we need.
Right. Selling yourselves is something. Absolutely. Okay. So now let me do this real quick. It's about, how many, like about 30 here. Let's see how fast we can do this. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want to 5. Okay, you're rating this. You're rating this on Amazon. Okay, this process is a product on Amazon. You need to give it a star rating. What's your rating
Out of 5?
for this process? This dating process that all of you just
Out of how
described.
many stars? 5
One
stars?
out of
2.
five, well, you can choose 3. Okay, quick.
No, like, how do you think?
We're not saying how many dates you're doing.
Out of this process that we just described, this dating process, you have to rate it on a 1 to 5. How many stars do you give it?
0.
1. Amazon doesn't let you do 2.5. That's why they choose 5, by the way, because you can't go in the middle. Huh? The whole dating process of this, the way you know it.
The conversation,
The entire process from beginning to end. How do you like it?
my own process.
The process. You're,
0.
okay, good. You with the statistics.
-5.
On a scale of 1 to 5, how many stars would you rate this process?
I wouldn't even rate it.
2 stars. How many stars? 4 stars. Okay. You're the most optimistic. So yeah. Huh?
What?
Okay. Next to you, I didn't see what I can't even see your face. What are you giving it? Yeah.
That is Nate.
So now it's your turn.
2 stars.
2 stars.
Who said 4 stars?
We got 5 stars.
Well, let's move it on. Let's move it on.
Listen, he likes window shopping.
Hey, this is a safe space. Don't judge anyone. Everyone's about to get their star rating.
Not me, I give 1.
Yeah, out of 5. Yeah.
Your experience.
How do you like this?
What's this?
This dating process.
Oh,
You think it's working? You think it's a good model? Is it a good model? 3 stars.
Right,
Okay.
not Jace one. I'm
So
going
zero. I'll give it a 3.5.
There's no how.
No,
What?
it's a 3.
What's your
Right. 2.5. 2.5.
No.
No.
2 or 3.
You can't do 2.5 on Amazon. There's a reason. Because everyone likes that. Right? It's easy. You gotta commit. You gotta commit. Huh? But on Amazon there isn't for a reason. So you said 3?
Yeah, no, I said 2.
2. Are you skewed more pessimistic? Okay. 2. How about you?
You mean for leading to marriage? Obviously, it's gonna be low because it hasn't happened, so 2.
Well, as a general, as
The dating
a
and
system.
dates, you get dates.
As a system, do you think
3.
it's okay?
Yeah, same. 1.
Because you get the dates. They just
Ethan,
don't.
you have to read this?
I'm gonna give it a 3,
So I
but
guess that's
because
a-
men have the upper hand.
Okay.
Oh, that
Well, it is.
Thank you for saying that.
I understand.
Great. Okay. We could just, I think we could just talk on one. Okay, good. So first of all, I'm happy that we have Baruch Hashem engagement. I want to be inviting you down.
We're gonna have an engagement.
That's the better. Okay. By the way, first of all, just very interesting to me, just observing, is that I think, this is not scientific, but I think the men rate is a lot higher than the women.
Well,
That's
of
just-
course, yeah.
that-
I don't know.
That's probably not so surprising. But, okay, so I think a consensus at this table, at least, and again, this is anecdotal because we're only about 30 people, but I think it's indicative of something larger. The consensus here is that it's pretty broken. It's not a very great model. And that makes sense because the reality is everything about it, not everything, but so much about it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Okay? And that's why we're going to try to push back against today, and hopefully we can introduce a new way of thinking. And if you have a new way of thinking, hopefully that can actually push enough of us to a new way of doing. And that is like this. There's so many problems with what we just described. First of all, the question of commitment. You have no idea what the other person is. You don't know. So even if you mentioned a good point. If they're on the app, so ostensibly we're here for the same reason. But that's not really so true. First of all, the guys are probably, many of them are looking for something else. And they're, like you said, it's very hard to know whether or not they just want to chat or whether they want to go a lot to the other extreme. And like, there's a spectrum in the middle that you kind of want to navigate. And that's one problem. And then there's a problem of commitment. You have no idea. In general, communicating over text message is a very bad idea because it's so broken. And we humans are not naturally conditioned to communicate that way. It's a very recent thing. So there's a problem of intention. There's a problem of communication. There's a problem of connection. Where we don't even know where each other are, And that's not to mention that once there's a plethora of options that you don't know, like Who said that there's so many options, so you don't know which one's the right one. There's always maybe something else down the line, around the corner. Who knows? So I don't think I have to elaborate on all the reasons why it's broken, but I think this is enough. So I think it's really important to think about it very differently. Let's think about other major decisions that you've already made in your lives. Most of you, I would assume, are college educated, right? Don't raise your hands, because if you're not, we don't have to get into that. But let's say most of you went to college, correct? When you decided where you go to college, did you decide it overnight?
No.
Nope.
Did you walk into a bar and figure that maybe your college is going to bump into you? Right? Nobody does that. It's a decision that you make. You deliberate over it. You probably apply it to multiple places, but you really take it. You probably, I don't know if you're the nerd who has like the pros and cons, the sheet. You did that. I'm sure someone heard that. Someone, for sure. Right? I'm also that nerd. No one. So it's a decision. When you make a major decision, you deliberate. And you do it with intention. And you try to boil it down to as much of the science as you can. So you figure out location. Do I want to relocate to a new state or not? Can I afford it? Do I want to take out loans, or do I want to go to a state school and get more public funding? Do I want to go to a liberal arts school? Do I want to go to a regular school? Do I want to go to business school? Where do I want to go? Do I want to? I don't know. There's so many considerations. I'm not so familiar, to be honest, but those are just some, right? And then there's so many others. And you thought about. I would think that most of you thought about these things before you made that decision, right? And there's other big decisions you've made in life. I think most of you already also have made another major decision in lives, namely
Where to work, where to live.
career choice, right? And where to live, right? So when you're living, a lot of people do tend to take it a little more serendipitous, but your career choice, I don't think was something you just fell into. Most people, especially in the professional world, you chose your career, right? It's something you've probably been working on since you were in college, or it's not immediately thereafter. It's something you're working towards. You have a plan. You're doing that's maybe even why you live here in this wonderful city as opposed to other places where you could, probably even have a place to park in a backyard. So there's a reason. These things we take with deliberation, and we try to make it as scientific as we can. So the big question here is that your life partner is no less of a major decision. It's in fact probably a bigger decision. Because where you work, you could change ultimately. Where you went to college, it's 4 years. I mean, it does have a lifelong impact, but even if you made the wrong choice at the wrong college, you could probably, hedge the fallout if you made the wrong choice, so to speak, right? You choose the wrong partner, it's not a good idea. It's a very good idea. It's one of the most, if not the biggest decision you're making in your life. So why would you leave it up to serendipity? It's not something you would leave up to serendipity. You don't just expect it to fall into your lap, right? That I said meet cute. No one said such a story. I don't think anybody relies on that anymore. But like it's like a novel fantasy, right? That two people, one falls off the boat, the other one goes to save them, and oh man, they don't happen, right? So that doesn't really happen. But in the back of the mind, some people do think that organically you're gonna meet someone at the kiddish, you're gonna meet someone maybe at a class, you're gonna meet someone a little bit more organically, and it's gonna just fall into love, and it's gonna work. So this is not. I'm here to tell you that that's not. Maybe, but it's not a very good way to expect it to happen, because this is a major decision. Be proactive about it. Make the conditions work in your favor as much as you can. That's what we're going to talk about today. How can we make the decisions work the best in our favor? The answer is. Let's read text number 1. I'm going to skip exercise 2A. It's very important. It is very important, but we're gonna touch on it either way. Text 1. Text 1 again is a letter from the Rebbe. Started from my right last time, so I'm gonna start from my left. I'll put you in the hot seat.
The Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, in the text of the blessings which he recited under the chuppah, a Jewish marriage is described as a binyan adayad, an everlasting edifice. Needless to say, this is not just a poetic phrase, but is an analogy containing many points of interest. Above all, when one is about to build a structure, the first thing that is necessary is to ensure that the foundation is solid. Whereas in regards to the structure which will rise on the foundation, there can be differences of opinions among persons about how much consideration to give to
Yes.
The outward appearance. How to reckon with the views of neighbors and friends, and whether to forego certain other things for the sake of external appearances. There can be no differences of opinion that the primary and overriding consideration, insofar as the foundation is considered, is that it should be solid and firm and durable, able to withstand changes of climate, and able to firmly support the entire structure with all the people on it. For this reason, the material chosen for the foundation must have been tested and proven to fulfill those vital requirements, tested and proven under various conditions, both favorable and unfavorable, even in the extreme.
Okay, thank you. You want to recap what you read? That's going to take another minute or so.
So similarly to a foundation or to building a building, you have to have a solid foundation and test it under all conditions, for all the extreme circumstances, and to make sure it's going to withstand and not just topple at, right, any slight variance. So similarly to marriage, you need that foundation there, and you need the shared values, and you need you need the same goals and same direction.
Yes, very well said, wasn't it?
Yoni.
Very well said, Yoni. So the Rebbe brings an analogy. He actually is drawing it from the blessing that's made under the chuppah. So many of you have been to a chuppah. So there's 7 blessings to recite, and in there we recite that we call it a binyan ade ad, everlasting edifice. And the Rebbe is pointing out that that's not just poetic license; it's a good metaphor for what a marriage is. Marriage is like a building. Okay, and the most important part of a building is, and if any of you ever done construction before, been involved in a construction project? Yes? Good. I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. It's a terrible thing. But if you have been, so you'll know there's 1,001 decisions to make when it comes to doing a construction project, especially if you're designing like your own home, right? So you have to figure out which light fixture to do, this, that. The reality is the light fixture, you could spend time with, you could squabble over the light fixture, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't really work, you don't like it, you can always switch. It's not a big deal, right? These are called the ornaments. And you could go cheap on it, really, right? You could just get a knockoff on eBay for $100 if you don't. If the one in Restoration Hardware is too expensive. It works, or it doesn't. Big deal, right? But there's one thing you have to make sure it's really done well. That's the foundation. If you're cheap on the foundation, I've seen this happen. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea because the whole building's gonna crumble. So same as with the marriage. There's a lot of things that go into a relationship. A lot of elements. And there's what we call, but you can split them up in the foundations and the ornaments. There's what's the bedrock of the relationship, and then there's the add-ons, the extras. And in terms of and what's important, obviously, to understand is that first of all to know what those foundations are, what are the fundamentals, and then to make sure that they match. Once they match, once it's strong at the bottom, so even when if it may part on the top, which it will, that's okay because on the bottom it's shared and it's strong. So now. Which brings us to a word that you said, I don't think it was even in the text, but it's kind of ingrained into our psyche, Baruch Hashem, is that there's 2 words, you said them, shared values, right? It may have become a buzzword, but it's not. I mean, it is, but it's also not, because it's really, really important. Values are what make the glue of any relationship, because at the end of the day, why is it so? Because values define who we are. That's who you are. You're not your hobbies, and you're not necessarily the goals that you've made, and you're certainly not your looks, and you're certainly not your financial status. Those are not you. What you are your values. And it's a little bit hard to have a working definition. I borrowed this, if you look in text 2a, I borrowed this from a wonderful book, by the way, which I do recommend. The name of the book is right there in the source reference. It's called I Only Want to Get Married Once. By Rit Mechan Levitan. I highly recommend. It's actually a really good book. I quoted a couple snippets from it along the course of these lessons. So she has her credentials. She's like a dating coach / social worker /
Social licensed therapist.
Lives in Yerushalayim, I believe. She has a lot of experience, and she wrote a number of books. This one, so it's short to the point. I read it like in one night. It's great. Anyways. So let's read her definition, and it's not hers. So I think it's kind of a universal definition of what values are. What are values? Hard to pin down. Well, let's just read it. Okay, so my South African friend, what's your name?
Josh. In essence, values are bedrock ideals. They are convictions regarding what we believe is right or wrong, good or bad, important and desirable. Values express our highest priorities. They are our deepest driving forces. Most people hold specific values close to their hearts. Values are intrinsic truths. That's why people fight for their values, and some would even die for their values. A lot of values.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little bit of a macabre way of thinking about it, but it's handy and relatively useful. What would you die for? What people would die for is probably what they feel strongly about, right? So I don't know if every value you have is something that you necessarily would give your life up for. I do think there's a little bit of a spectrum there, but certainly if you would give your life up for it, you can know that for sure that's one of your core values, and it defines who you are. So now, when you go and when you're approaching a marriage, and again, whatever works in a marriage is what you have to have in mind when you're dating, okay? Because they're not separate one from the other. The marriage is a destination, so your dating is just to get there. So if your dating is to get to the marriage, what's important for marriage is important now on day one, when you go ahead and meet that prospective suitor, right? It's not suitor, it's suitor, right? Thank you. When you go ahead and meet that prospective suitor, on the first day, it's important because if it's not important to them, you're both wasting your time because let's say you'll start driving, okay? I'm saying metaphorically. You start driving and then you realize after a year of driving together on a journey of life and you're not even going to the same place. So you're wasting your time. So it's important on day one to know with this person, do we have what's going to work for ultimately, not that you're getting married to every person you meet, but that should be on your mind. 10 is the question guiding your initial meeting. Is this a person who I could marry? Meaning, what can I do to find out whether or not this person is someone I could marry? And if I could find out quickly enough that this is a person I cannot marry, move on. It could be pen pal friends, but that's about it. Yes.
I think you're not pointing out that the other person has to want to think the same thing. So
Absolutely.
a
Yes.
lot of times the people come to the date and they have different things in mind. And
We're gonna
we'll
get there. Yeah. Very, very good point. Correct. Yeah. You're not the only person at this party. I get it. Okay. So now I put before you a sample again from her book. We're gonna get it towards the end, but I didn't forget. So again from her book, a list of values, because when I was trying to come up with them on my own, I had a hard time. She had a whole list of 40 of them. I think great. Let me just lift it from her book. And these are just a sample list. I think there's a lot of overlap in some of them, but these are the type of things that usually people consider to be a value. Like hiking, I wouldn't call it value. Maybe for some people, hiking is a value. I'm not looking at you. Maybe. But hiking, I would put more as a hobby. People like hiking. There is someone on this planet though that's value. I mean, hiking is defines who they are. That's all they are. They are a hiking person. So if their partner is not someone who appreciates hiking and wants to go hiking, there's nothing to talk about. But that's rare. That's rare. There are other people, yes.
Is this in level of importance?
No, not necessarily.
This list.
I have no idea why. Yeah.
This list of 40 items, is this her comprehensive list of the most important core values of just society, or this is just a partial examples?
I don't know if it's. I honestly don't remember in the book if it's her comprehensive list per se, but even if it is, that's a pretentious thing to say because you can't get a comprehensive list. But it's an attempt. Yeah. It's an attempt at it's a pretty wide bag. It's a pretty wide.
You're allowed to have.
Say again? Yeah. Yeah, but the reason I'll explain because for some people, there are people walking this planet who have a really key thing. I'll explain. Most people want to be kind, right? Everybody wants to be kind, right? Everybody's a nice person, ostensibly, right? But then you break it down and you want to what's your real value? Okay, included in being kind is having an open home. Have you ever heard people say, I want to have an open home? Good. Most people who I know also say that they want to have an open home. But then you break it down further. You say, what does that mean? What does it mean to have an open home? What does it mean to have an open home? You in theory, you want to have your relatives over once a month? Holidays? Or do you want to have people over every single week and you don't mind throwing out the week people, the doors open and whatever, and people just walk in? There are levels. So that's why, in a way, it's useful to get specific because these things mean something beyond the cliche of just the umbrella of what they generalize to be. Okay.
Can I add a point about values?
Sure.
I think so. This is just a list. there are so many values out there. You could have one that like is the value to you, but you won't. I mean, hopefully you'll find someone else with the same values, but it's important for marriage. Because I think also like not all values necessarily need to have aligned with the other person.
Correct.
You're allowed to have values outside of that.
Correct.
It's like to put yourself like into a list and like, oh, none of these fit you, or that's, there could be so many more things that you value.
Right. There's going to be, I would say, hold on, give me a second. I would say that there's probably a handful, literally 5 or maybe less, of values that every person could boil down to like, these are completely non-negotiable. These are me. And if someone who I live with doesn't respect or share these values, I simply cannot live with them. I can't respect them. And again, if you can't respect someone, you can't live with them. Love be damned. It's not going to work. So, I would say there's a short list. Everybody has their short list. And then on top of that, there's a number, there's going to be more, and there's going to be like, you know, in what's the word I'm looking for? Like the circle. Not the Venn diagram. Whatever. In concentric circles, it's going to keep on going out and include more and more. But then the ones around the edges are probably going to be those that you could forgive. Like, you know, I like baseball. Okay, I like sports. Some people, sports is a big deal, but my wife doesn't respect sports. It's fine, you know. I could live with the fact that she hates it that once a week I'm on, you know, watching Monday Night Football. Fine, that you could tolerate that. But if religion is a strong thing and my wife doesn't respect that, or vice versa, that's something that for most people would probably be non-negotiable. Okay, what do you want to say?
Just like the when you're saying like strong foundation, and right off the bat you're gonna know, like you go on a date and you're gonna know if you have, you know, your list, whatever your values, and you ask the other person on the first date, like if the guy likes the girl or the girl likes the guy, they're gonna agree to whatever values you like. You're never gonna know until you spend time with the person what the real values are.
That's why we're gonna be intentional about this. No, because
you have to watch what they do, not what they say.
But you could talk, and you could ask.
It's also generalizing that people are dishonest.
Right. First of all, I think most people, and actually the more older and more mature people become, it's in both parties' best interest to be honest about their values. So, and even if they're not, and you know, you're putting on your best image on a date, because that's what people try to do. If you're asking and you're being honest, and you are being honest enough about presenting yourself and asking good questions and having good conversation, if you're perceptive enough, you'll probably read between the lines pretty quickly. And that's besides the fact that, again, to answer your question you asked me 10 minutes ago, we haven't yet talked about the shot, the third party. It's important. We're going to get there.
Can you just add that everything on this list makes pretty much for the mental person, and there's nobody who wouldn't want to see one of these values as something they identify with. Nobody's going to look at this list and say like, oh, gratitude's not that important to me. It's not one of my values. Like everybody.
Right, but if you have to boil down to a short list of 5, which ones are the non-negotiables?
Like, and you're looking for another person, or you identify?
Well, let's first start with yourself. You first start with yourself.
Going down this list would say, yeah, that's me, that's me. Like, no?
Well, if you only had to choose 5,
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I mean,
in
this room, yes, but like in the grand scheme of things.
I'm not like, you know, I consider myself to be a kind and compassionate person. I don't know how high I rate on the care of adoption of orphans. I don't know.
Okay, so
That'd be tough. My sister adopted an orphan when she had like 6 or 7 kids, and this kid was a teenager, an autistic teenager, and she adopted him into her house with only 3 bedrooms. And I looked at her like she's nuts. I still do. I don't know. I don't know if I would do that.
Can I point out on the list it says commitment to one spouse and for children? Is that even like a question?
Well, again, break it down. What does it mean? Everyone's committed to their children. You know how many parents don't really commit to their children? I know a lot. Anyway, let's go further. Okay, so now I want to read texts 3 and 4. I think those are pretty important. They're very beautiful letters from the Rebbe. And both these letters bring out the idea, the point that we're driving at here. And that is, I'll say, we'll just rehash it out orally, and then we'll read it inside of the Rebbe's words. They're very strong. Is that the shared values that you're going to have with someone? That is, there's a couple points to bring out in that conversation. Number one, first of all, that's the bedrock. That's the glue that's going to keep you together. Because again, it defines who you are. So it's going to keep you together with the person you're going to live with. And it's going to be the primary plank of what's going to make for the respect for one another. Because as we're going to learn, we're not going to cover that this week. God willing, next we'll learn more about love, the topic. But love is great, but respect is better and more important. So respect is absolutely critical in a relationship. And you cannot respect someone with whom you don't share the values that you have, that you possess, and vice versa. So that's number one. Number two, and that's going to be the point we're going to bring out more in text number 4, is that a lot of people are want to know, okay, but there's so much more to me than these things, and I don't know. It's hard to know what's going to be down the line. And the answer is that your values actually, if they really define who you are, that's actually the thing you could take the most to the bank. You can probably trust that part of yourself more than anything else. So today, you may like hiking. Today, you may want to live in New York City. Or today, I don't know, all kinds of things. Today, you may look the way you look. You're not going to look like that forever. You may have the amount of money that you have today, but you're not going to have that amount of money forever. I mean, maybe, God willing, you'll have even more. But you don't know. And you're going to change. And your partner is always going to change. These things are always going to change. So how do you know that that your relationship is going to stand the test of time? So the answer is, first of all, you don't. The best shot that you're going to have is, again, the foundation. You could switch out the lamp. You could switch out the wallpaper. You could switch all those things out. You can't really switch out the beams underneath the floor. You can't switch out the concrete that's that's holding up this building. And that concrete is those shared values you have. That's why, if you know couples, they can be married. I knew couples married for 40 years, right? And then for whatever reason, one has a crisis of faith. Saying in the religious community, it happens, right? There's no way that couples stay together. They could live for 40 years together, but if the religion goes, that's a value that defines the very person who they are. So their spouse can no longer respect them. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. I'm not casting judgment on the person saying they're a bad person, but they're incompatible. They're no longer compatible with the person they live with. Doesn't matter how long. It could be 40 or 50 years. I know such persons. Very interesting story, but it happens because that touches the very core of who that person is. And so once you switch that out, that's all. It's almost always not going to work. But everything else, I'm not saying religion is the only value. There's other values that touch to the core. Religion is usually one of them for a religious person. Everything else you could switch out. But we're on that short list of like 5 or less things. Those are going to be the glue that holds you together. You share that. Let's read some of that inside, because I think I talked enough. Number 3.
When it comes to looking for a prospective mate, you have to focus on more important matters. If you will do so, the smaller, more trivial matters will automatically become inconsequential. As is known, when the inner, truer part of something is manifest, the more external, trivial matters are lost. With such an approach, all alleged challenges and obstacles will fall away, and you should very quickly be able to find a suitable match, both physically and spiritually. What's more, in most cases, the reality is that when the important matters align, eventually the more trivial matters match up as well.
Okay, you want to recap that in your words? You could take a minute to read it again.
The way I read this is that you have your top 5 core values, like you had mentioned, and then all of those other nice to haves are not as important to a long-lasting relationship, and then potentially become things or areas that you yourself start to adopt and like as well. So if you have the core, then everything else starts to come together.
Perfect. Well said. Exactly. So there's two steps. So first of all, the focusing, like you said, the focusing on the core is what's most important and for the longevity. And more and number 2 is that oftentimes when it aligns on the bottom, on the foundation, oftentimes on the top, it could align as well. Very often happens. So let's read more about that on text 4. Thank you. It's all you.
Good luck, eh?
I can hold your hand, but I think you're good.
I would like to address the question about shitting. Obviously, when approaching marriage at the appropriate age, there must be chemistry and emotional attraction between the parties. But it goes without saying, the primary factor that determines the stability and happiness of a marriage is that the 2 parties are as closely compatible as can be in the critical area of their value systems. Compatibility of values will ensure long-term inner peace and harmony between the couple, even in the event that passions ebb. In such instances, it is specifically the shared values that become even more important. Clearly, the amount of time in which passions fly with sufficient force to sway any big decisions isn't very long. When the passion subsides, the person begins to think more objectively and ask themselves, was I too subjective? Was I really in the right place to make such a big decision? Was it right to cause pain to someone else or to both of us? I'll add another point that is really intuitive. For a marriage to be successful, both parties must be content, even after the initial period of passion dies down. In married life, where two parties are constantly in each other's presence, it's impossible that one party's feelings will remain hidden from the other forever. Sooner or later, they will certainly come forth. If you're going to ask me to paraphrase that, I'm going to revert to Lisa.
Lisa, you've been nominated.
I guess it's basically saying that the honeymoon phase, like
Yeah.
eventually it's gonna go away, so like you need that foundation to be together.
Exactly.
But you have objectivity.
Yes, you need objectivity in a relationship. Right? You read well, and you nominated the right person. So that was good. Objectivity isn't critical because you're gonna eventually think for yourself. And you're eventually gonna want to know that you're actually happy with this relationship. And so the single thing that's gonna give you that security and that confidence is to know that you actually can respect and like this person. And that is gonna, again, in the at the risk of sounding repetitive, that's gonna boil down to those shared values you have with that person. So, because this is how young people work. We're all young, thank God. And young people have, I mean, anybody really has, passion, feelings. So oftentimes when you get together with someone, passions could fly. And that's great. That's part of the process. Like the Rebbe started this letter, it's obviously critical of this one. Chemistry and emotional attraction is a critical component. The problem oftentimes is I could paper over what needs to actually be addressed. So when you lead with your heart instead with your head or other parts of your body, then it could really get in the way of what you need to be thinking, because your head will eventually come out. You're gonna pop your head out of the sand, water, whatever metaphor you want to use, and start thinking. And you want to know if you actually like this, if this actually is going to work. And if the entire time your heart was getting in the way and fooling you, and it could be a month, it could be a year, it could be 10 years, it could be a long time. And then you're like stuck. You're way far down this process to make a good decision. So it's difficult. So it's always good to keep them. So that's why it's good before you go anywhere to get that. What are my shared values? Find someone who has, what are my values? What really defines who I am? Find someone else who has that as well, who shares that with you. Ask good questions before you even start, then start. Lead with your head, not your heart. Now,
that can also be debilitating in a way.
Say again?
It can also be debilitating. Like in a way, you can overthink and it can freeze you up, and you can stop growing and moving forward.
It can, but I'm talking about before. A lot of the overthinking and debilitating happens when you're in the relationship, and then you take a step back and you're trying to like gauge it. That's doubly difficult. Because A, you're deliberating, and B, you're already in some sort of quasi relationship with this person, so it's difficult because you're being pulled. Whereas if you do as much of that homework before you even meet anyone, so yes, it could be a little exhausting, and it could feel cerebral and a little bit dry, maybe technical, but it's in your best interest. So I'm not going to read through everything I quoted here, but it's a lot of good stuff here.
The takeaway is buy Hannah Levinson's book.
That's one. Yes, but it really is very good. But on this point, this is not something, and this is something the Rebbe wrote in that letter, but it's something that increasingly as a society we're realizing this. That a lot of people ask, okay, so you know what? Where am I going to live? How many kids we're going to have? How much, what type of home we're going to have? Are critical questions, but not now. I mean, now we're just having fun. We're just grabbing a drink. See where it goes. You want to know how many kids we're having already? I mean, slow it down, right? So I'm not going to read it. You can read it yourself. This article that I copied for you from the New York Times, the headline itself says enough. Questions couples should ask or wish they had before marrying. From the New York Times. This is not from the Rebbe's letters. This is not from.
I mean, how many kids you should have is definitely a second date question, right?
It's early though. It's very early. There's no reason to wait. There is no reason to wait. You shouldn't like someone and then find out they don't want to have as many kids as you do, or at least in the
That
ballpark.
would kind of suck.
You're right. Eh? So find out early. Find out if you can early. You may as well. So these are 16 questions. 15. Yeah, look at the first one. Again, from the New York Times. Have we discussed whether or not to have children? And if yes, who's going to be the primary caregiver? How many people don't ask that question? And they go in, the man is like this knight in shining armor. He's like a feminist warrior. His wife is going to have a career. He's going to be a stay-at-home dad. And his wife comes in. He's like, no, that wasn't the idea. You go out and work, and I'm going to be home with the kids, or vice versa. And they're like, the man's like, what do you mean? I'm like this incredible guy. I'm going to prop you up. I'm going to rah you on every social media platform that exists and will exist. And you want to be like barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen? Are you crazy? And she's like, yeah, not those words. That's what I want to do. And so he's like, oh, whoops. Or the other way around. I'm just giving you one stupid example. These are things that these are real life things that happen. So you've known each other for a long time. You took a trip to you took that trip to the Bahamas together. You did whatever you did. You've been back and forth around the world. And all of a sudden you figure out, you find out that you don't even want to have that, he says, no, I don't want to, no, 10 years, no kids, 10 years. And she's like, what do you mean? I want to have kids like tomorrow. Sorry. He said, things you should ask right away. Yes.
When do you ask these questions? How soon and who should ask them?
Okay, good.
Maybe a mediator.
Okay. So yes, no, that's not a joke. That's what I wanted to get at. So I want to just read text 7 because I think it's powerful. And then I'm going to answer your question with text 8. Who wants to read text 7? The Rebbe's letter is a little harder to read through because they're dense. That's even with me translating it like very prayerfully.
Argentina.
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 No, we don't put anyone in
Spanish.
I put you on the spot. Now you want to pass it on. Is that the idea?
Yeah. You're gonna translate.
Yeah, only if you do the recap.
Text 7.
Yeah.
Daniel's first marriage had lasted only 2 years, although he and his ex-wife dated each other well over a year before getting married. Even though they had spent a lot of time together, they hardly spoke of goals and values. They were simply too busy having fun. The only serious discussion they had lasted a few minutes. It went something like this. Do you want to have kids one day? Yeah. Do you? Yeah. That was the extent of the serious conversation. Nothing was said about how soon into the marriage they wanted to have kids. Once the couple was married, these issues quickly rose to the surface and they started to argue about when to start a family. They had completely different visions in this area. The marriage crashed quickly and painfully.
Summary.
They did summary. Wow. The primary element guiding the dating process.
Now that's the whole section.
Did I not read that?
I mean, you could summarize the text in your own words.
Well, I think that was
I mean, it's pretty simple.
yeah, it was, I mean, it's kind of on theme for what everything we've been discussing so far.
Exactly.
It's just like if you don't have not only the right conversations, but having the right conversations at the right time, it doesn't really matter. You have the right conversations too late.
Exactly.
With content.
Okay, so a lot of these problems arise now. What was your name? Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, okay, so but you even asked Maria. Okay, Maria, you asking a couple questions along the way. We're gonna get there now, okay? Now we're gonna answer your questions you asked. You want to know about the other party's intentions? What's the best way? When exactly should you ask these questions? Those are good questions. We're gonna answer them now. A lot of the problems that we've identified now are a result of this dating system. Now, we all know, how old is the dating system that we currently have? Roughly? The digital one is maybe 10, 20 years. But even if you take the digital element out of it, this whole idea that you're gonna meet someone organically.
Maybe since the 1960s.
Right? I would probably put it about 1960s when, the free love movement and the counterculture kind of came in and broke everything down in American society. We're not going to say whether or not that's that. That's just what happened. Very good. Yeah. So it's literally, I don't know, 60 years old. 70 max, tops. That's in America. Some cultures still don't even get there yet. Okay? So if it's broken, there's a reason why it's broken, because it's very new, and I'm not so convinced that it's a great idea. Let's look at older systems, much, much older. And the Jewish system, in the Jewish world, we have a much, much older system. It's much reviled. It's been very ridiculed in, Fiddler on the Roof. Literally each one of his daughters is on a progressive warpath to tear it down, But it's worth taking a look. So let's take a look. I quoted you a description of what the shidduch system look like? Now, a shidduch is a little heavy word. What's a shidduch? Shidduch. But well, let's take out the ideals. Let's take out the let's extract the good ideas from it and see what we can apply to ourselves. Maria, you want to read it?
Which one?
8. Sorry, I skipped you over. You'll take a rain check?
No, let the person read it. I don't want to.
Okay, fine. So you're up.
Okay,
Text 8.
sure.
Makes sense by the way that you're reading it.
Rabbi Laser Gurkov in the arrangement. The matchmaker or Shatan begins by finding out all that she or he can about the men and women being matched on, their interests, characters, personalities, and needs. Carefully matching up the parties, the matchmaker ensures that neither gentleman nor lady meets up with those with whom they share little in common. When the young couple goes out on a date, they treat their encounter with sensitivity and pragmatism. They don't circle around each other. They launch into frank discussion. They are there to examine what they have in common, if there's chemistry between them, and if they find each other favorable. They're immediately comfortable with subjects that are often left untouched for months. Questions such as, what do you want out of life, and what kind of family do you envision are comfortably broached. Families, personalities, hopes, and aspirations are all open to discussion. They each try to paint a picture of the life they hope to lead. If their pictures and values are compatible and they enjoy a degree of chemistry, then they have discovered a foundation upon which their marriage can be built. If they're incompatible or if the basic attraction just isn't there, they simply discontinue their relationship and move on with dignity and amity. Well, isn't that sweet?
So you want to recap that one?
Yeah, sure. I guess the takeaway, so the shidduch or shadchan, I guess, they basically just match people up, and you see, you feel out the vibes, you see if there's something clicking or not, and if there is, great, go forward with it. If not, then other fish in the sea.
That's right. So here, Maria, to answer your question, it's critical. Sylvia, Sydney. Okay. It's very critical to get an advocate for yourself. If there's anything you gotta take from today is get yourself an advocate. Half the questions that so many people waste their time asking each other on a date, and half of that stupid ghosting that goes on all those apps could be avoided. There's no reason for you to meet with someone who you know. For example, if you want to have a large family, and however you define a large family, let's just give a working definition. How many kids? 4. You want to have 4 kids, let's say. I don't know. Let's say you want to have 4 kids, and that's really, really important to you. Yeah, you're willing to negotiate 3, 5, whatever, but roughly, right? And there's a woman out there who looks great, everything's right, but absolutely no way in hell, no kids. Is there any reason for you to even meet that person? No. You're wasting your time. You are wasting time. What?
How is that any different from online dating? They can, you could see a person who lists up all of those things, and you can match or not match with that person.
On what?
She's saying, how is shadow
okay, well,
dating different
because
from online dating?
because as we all seen on the online dating, a lot of it is fake.
Yeah.
Okay, even the quick, back of the envelope description that you gave, most of it's generic and most of it's false, right? And there's a picture of a puppy in it, so
Yeah,
of
but
course it's
the
fake.
pool of people your person advocate is gonna get you is much smaller and limited compared to all the.
And that's
Because it's more
exactly what you
narrowed
want.
down.
And that's exactly what you want. You're not getting married to 100 people, right? You're getting married
Yeah,
to
you
one.
get one, but you want a bigger selection.
Why?
But
Why?
you can pick a good, better
So get 10
person.
matchmakers.
Why is the assumption that if the bigger pool means you get a better person?
Well, there's no way of knowing, but the chances are.
You don't know.
Well,
All you
only
need is the
one-
right person.
You
All
only
you need
get
is the
one
right
But
person.
the chances are you're gonna get a better person out of a bigger
Better?
selection.
Not necessarily.
But wait, are we talking about a professional matchmaker or?
So now,
a friend
there's
of a
different
friend?
levels, right? It could be a professional matchmaker. It could be a friend. It doesn't have to necessarily be someone who has a job as a shotgun, which you could use, which you could employ. But the point is that a lot of the homework that needs to be done, a lot of that research does not have to be done by you. I mean,
Can
okay,
I
so
offer an example of this?
Yes.
Major flaw in the system is
Yeah.
that, I don't know about all shotguns, but the shotguns that I've been encountering, they don't go as deep as describing here. And so they see it more as an inventory of what resumes they have. Like a shotgun, try to introduce them to a guy, you test it on fathers to why I'm shocked. And I went back to Chava and I said, he texted me on Chava. And she's like, no, that can't be true. So the fact that she doesn't even know that the guy would text me on Shabbos, there's a problem. Like, how well can you know their values when you don't even know if they.
Okay, so then, so you do need a better shot. Okay, I don't know that shot. Okay.
Everyone nowadays takes shotgun and everybody has to inventory resumes and they're like.
Yes, every system is going to be commercialized, and when flaws exist in the apps or whatever, that there's going to be flaws in the shot system as well. It's going to get commercialized, and there's going to be people who, you know, but so it's best to have. That's why even a professional shotgun, as good as they are, I would actually say a friend or someone who is an advocate for you, who really knows who you are and is willing to actually vet the other person for who they are. Meaning, if you sat down and wrote down this list at the end of your paper, I put a thing there, the 3 values, 3 things, just 3 things. Keep Shemir Shabbos is probably pretty important to you. So you can tell this friend, shotgun, mentor, rabbi, rebbitzin, whoever it is, third party. You tell them, listen, please don't waste my time. Don't introduce me to anyone who's not Shemir Shabbos or whatever other things are on that short list. So of course every system is going to be flawed, but you could try to do the best you can. Yes.
Also, like, speaking of like with foundation and comparing the whole thing to like real estate, like today when you go shopping and you go on the street, you can look for yourself and go out like do the landmark for yourself to find a place for yourself, or you can go use a real estate agent that will like show you around.
Well, exactly.
Right. I mean, most people will probably use a real estate agent. Now, of course.
No,
Most people are inside.
Oh.
I don't know.
There's value having a shotgun.
I would 100% never look for myself.
You want? Okay, so.
Can I,
Yeah,
I do think what Sibi said is like it is an issue in the shotgun world because, and so maybe your advice in how to approach that, or how to manage shadchanim better, so that if the whole point is for there to be a narrower selection and a narrower suggestion, which I do agree with you is more beneficial, how do we then manage shadchanim who get an influx of resumes and for them it becomes a numbers game? That's one question.
Okay.
So the other thing but like on the flip side, to like defend the position, you can, if you are going through a friend, I had a friend approach me last week and asked me to look into somebody that they met at a kiddush. But this friend said to me, just can you please, when you ask this person, find out about X, Y, and Z. These are the things that are important to me.
Yes.
And so I did, and that person was down for it. And so there.
That's what I was going to say. I see as much as professional shotgun are good, and you know, I'm not a professional shotgun. I have Baruch Hashem, and you know, had the privilege to match people up. You could do a merger. There's definitely an element of merging, but the point, just take out the core concept, namely that get the homework done before you meet. Get that homework done. So you meet someone at the kiddush.
Yeah.
You meet someone at the kiddush. You like them, great, and you even have a casual conversation, whatever. Fine. So you go home, call a mutual friend like your friend did. That's great. Get a mutual friend on the case and say, you know, I met this person, looked interesting. Can you find out like exactly what you said, X, Y, and Z? I want to know. Do they want, you know, are they looking to get married? They're not, if they're just on the meat market doing their thing, I'm not interested. Do they want to have a family? Where do they want to live? I don't know. Whatever's on your short list, and and it should be doable. Your friend could find out for you, and if your friend doesn't have a friend, your friend has a friend, could do, or a friend, someone could do it. Whatever the 3, everyone has their 3 questions. I don't know.
You want me to say what my friend's 3 questions were? My friend was Sephardi, but the person he was speaking to was Ashkenazi. Right. So he wanted to know if this person would be open to running a Sephardi home. They would, whatever. If they were open to spiritual growth in things like Shmirat, like meaning there were certain halachic things that he wanted implemented in his house, and if this person would be okay with that. And whatever, the 3rd thing was a little bit more personal.
Great, those are really good questions. And it's your friend was smart to ask them before, because if the person, the answer was no, and they would meet, and worse yet, if they would actually like each other, then they'd really be up a creek without that. Absolutely. So you want to get these things squared away before. Okay, so I must go. I'd love to continue this conversation.
Sure.
Next week I want to address, and if we made it so technical and we made it such a science, when's the romance, right? We want love. We'll talk about that next week.
So a few quick points to make. Thank you, Ahrele Loschak, before we head out.